Welcome everyone, hello and good day. My name is Yen Ong and I'm Spotify's Head of Sales for Southeast Asia, Hong Kong and Taiwan. I'm thrilled to have all of you join us today at our brand new Singapore office, which only opened early this year. loveAudio is a series of global events designed to inspire and educate our clients on the power of digital audio, contextual data and creativity. Now, today's special edition called loveAudio Vertical Insider is designed for FMCG brands, and our aim is to showcase how we can address your business challenges with our unique media solutions. Now, while this is a virtual event, we want this to be as dynamic and interactive as possible. So, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box located on the right side of your screen, and we will try our best to answer as many of your questions throughout the event. There will also be a live Q&A session right at the end. Globally, FMCG or CPG is one of the largest industries. It is also one of the sectors that has the largest subcategories, and with that comes different marketing and advertising needs to connect with different generations of consumers. While some advertising campaigns have had a long shelf life, such as have a break, have a Kit Kat, or share a Coke, there is an inevitable need to rewrite our playbooks in order to meaningfully connect with today and tomorrow's consumers. And in relation to Spotify's users, I am referring to the Gen Zs and the millennials. This generation of digital natives are less likely to settle for a slogan alone. They want to know the purpose and the philosophy behind your brand. They want brands to be engaged with culture, not just detached or just stay above the fray. And they want brands to reflect their diversity and capture their individual style. This evolving and uncertain consumer landscape poses significant challenges for brand advertisers, but on the flip side provides an opportunity for FMCG companies to overhaul and modernize their approach. Over the years, we have been consistently partnering various global and local FMCG brands in Singapore to connect with these generations of consumers, to help address some of their biggest communication challenges. Using our streaming intelligence to reach the most relevant audience in the right place at the right time and in the right moment. Over the past 18 months, we've witnessed a massive pivot within the FMCG sector to digitally influence and build brands, as winning shelf space no longer became a top priority. Data-driven marketing went beyond just efficiency in targeting or pricing, but with an increasing focus on being seamlessly contextual, meaningful, and authentic. To do this, brands and marketers need to prioritize the platforms that can provide the human truth about their consumers and help shape their relationship with them. Brands need to work with platforms that give them a unique insight on their customers to better understand them. Now imagine Spotify's audience as the biggest concert stadium in the world. The cheering fans in the stands are excited and engaged. They are the supermoms, the amateur chefs, the omni-channel shoppers, the very people your brand needs to engage with. Did you know that 49% of moms streams at least 1 hour of audio every day? We reach your audience where other platforms can't go, because our listeners use Spotify to soundtrack their lives across a variety of content, contexts, and devices. We are uniquely positioned to help advertisers connect with the digital generation. Audio advertising performs extremely well for FMCG brands when we measure the positive brand results within a multi-platform environment. The top 10% of the measured campaigns tend to have nearly 3/4 of their impressions tied to audio. The bottom 10% of the campaigns tend to have less than half of the impressions tied to audio. FMCG campaigns perform best with 65% audio, 30% display, and only 15% video, primarily because our ad-supported listeners spends averagely about 2.5 hours a day across their devices. That's the amount of time it takes to cook or eat a 4-course meal. It is enough time to go through your entire shower, hair care, and skin routine twice, or binge watch 3 to 4 episodes of your favorite series. It is also on par or longer than the amount of time they spend on some of the biggest video and social platforms. People are streaming audio more than ever. Audio streaming has been on an impressive climb, up to almost 69% here in Singapore in 2020 alone. That is not hard to imagine because today there are more ways to listen. Through widespread adoption of smart speakers, connected home devices, connected cars, and Bluetooth-powered wearables, there are more to listen to with the rise of podcasts and access to the world's recorded music on streaming audio platforms. And as any Spotify user will attest to, more discovery and more personalization. Recommending content based on what you like to listen to, Discover Weekly on Spotify, Daily Mixes, Release Radar, Your Daily Podcasts, etc. We believe that no other global company is as focused as Spotify on being audio first. And we have just begun to accelerate our investment into this space. Recently, we just made strides to reimagine the audio experience with the launch of Spotify Green Room through the acquisition of Locker Room, a live audio startup. With audio starting to take center stage, our ambition is to help you navigate this space. Now more than ever, it is important to consider where you are investing your efforts in creating an authentic, emotional, and personal connection with your consumers, especially with our core audience of Gen Zs and millennials. One of the most overlooked advantages of audio advertising is that it is a fresh playing field. According to Kantar's latest research, 56% of Gen Zs and millennials find audio as an escape from too much visual stimulation. It's time to consider an alternative to an absolutely crowded space across multi-screens. It is time to emotionally capture attention through their ears as audio streaming soundtracks their life. Your audience are on Spotify and they are ready to listen. For the next 60 minutes or so, we will be looking at how brands within the FMCG sector can optimize marketing and advertising strategies through audio as a platform. We will be deep diving into the latest insights and creative solutions that we hope will help shape your next move. Don't forget to submit your questions via the Q&A box located on the right, as our panel of experts will be answering them live towards the end of the event. Last but not least, stay on to experience an incredible performance all the way from LA just for this event by the young and talented Remy Wolf. On that note, thank you for taking time to be with us today and enjoy the rest of the event. Next up on stage, I pass the mic over to Max Koo, Director of Sales at Spotify, and Waris Jain, Director of Media Domain at Kantar, to take us through the latest media trends. Thank you.
Thanks, Yen. It's wonderful to have you join us today amidst a very busy day. My name is Max Koo, Director of Sales at Spotify. For the next 15 minutes, with Waris Jain, Director of Media Domain at Kantar, we will take you through our recently concluded Kantar Incremental Study, where we will uncover why the golden age of audio is now, and how you can take full advantage of the study while planning your marketing mix. Hello, Waris. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Max and Spotify, for having me here today. Hello, everyone. My name is Waris Jain. I lead media measurement practice for Kantar Singapore, and I had the pleasure of working with Spotify on this study, The Golden Age of Audio, to understand what Spotify role is in consumers' daily life.
Fantastic. So let's begin with an easy one, shall we?
Yeah.
When we first started on this study, we wanted to measure how Spotify and audio played a part, of course, in a user's daily life and different moments, especially those screenless moments. Kantar played a crucial part in shaping how that survey was done. Could you elaborate more on the methodology that we took?
Yeah. So to start with, we started off with a question where we looked at Spotify not being part of traditional audio buying and planning for marketeers in Singapore. And we looked at various things and various questions that emerged out of it. And to name a few, the burning questions were to understand what different applications that consumers use in their daily life, and what role does Spotify play in that ecosystem, and also to understand who are the listeners who are listening to Spotify, what's their profile, what segments do they belong to, what things that they usually buy and stuff, and what's the behavior of using Spotify, advertisements on Spotify, and so on and so forth. And last but not the least, to understand what marketeers can do about it and how they can plan their marketing budgets on Spotify.
Of course. Well, we obviously are not the first ever to run any form of study.
Yeah.
And of course, in any form of study that anyone undertakes, one of the key most important component is naturally the respondents that participated in the research. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about how we selected these users.
Yeah, so when we do any study, obviously what we look for is to understand the population, the size, and the segments that we want to look at, and obviously the objectives of the study. And based on all this, we decide on the sample size. And in this case, for Singapore, we selected about 600 interviews. So we've done 600 interviews among age group of 13 to 55, males and females both, and across the nation. We made sure that we have a good representation of users across different user profiles, like age group and gender, equal representation as per the natural fallout, as well as the national population. Also make sure that we have good representation of different category buyers, different segments and stuff, and as well as the good representation of audio streaming, ecosystem. Yeah.
Thanks for that. I'm sure our audience would also would love to know why 600?
Yeah.
Why 600 responded and why not 1,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously the things that goes behind it is to understand what's our ultimate objective and what's the country population. When I say ultimate objective, I mean what are the different segments that we want to learn about, different profiles that we want to learn about. So we go about selecting a number of people so that we have enough number there, but at the same time looks for if the sample is good enough to represent the entire nation or not. So in Singapore, given that we have over 5 million, 6 million population, how much sample is good enough for us to have a good representation of the population? So those are the things that goes behind while calculating the required number of interviews to be done in a market.
Of course, Kanta being one of the top survey companies around, we would obviously trust your judgment in terms of that. So before we go into the specifics of the study, was there any profound call-outs, like over glaring, from the study that from Kanta's point of view?
So one certain thing is that I want to call out that the ecosystem certainly is changing from the consumer's perspective. They want to be more in control of what they listen to, how they listen to, where they listen to, and not just listen. Why not? It's what they watch, what they do, and stuff like that. And that ecosystem is shifting from users listening to what is being broadcasted to what they want to do, and they want to be more in control. It's true in other industries as well. We have seen that happening in OTT. We have seen that happening now in music streaming industry as well. So that's the profound thing, that the consumer is shifting to wanting to have more control over what they want to watch, listen, and things like that. Yeah.
Interesting. So just continuing on of what you just mentioned about taking control. With that, let's dive a little bit deeper in terms of consumption, right? We saw that with all the changes in the media consumption happening across Singapore, like what you just mentioned, more than double of the survey respondents, 2.4 times to be exact, uses audio streaming apps than radio streaming services on a daily basis. Given this change, can you speak about how brands can leverage digital audio in their marketing strategy to reach those specific audiences?
Yeah, picking up your last keyword, reach, isn't that the primary thing when marketers plan for things, right? So looking at the audience and comparing it to channels like radio, which is the closest to, when it comes to marketing buys for marketers in the audio marketing ecosystem. We looked at all the radio channels and compare Spotify as a radio channel or a music streaming channel, we saw that Spotify emerged as one of the largest channel or station in Singapore, and then follows the other radio channels. Spotify, not only that, but also was able to deliver about 12% incremental reach over on top of all radio put together, and about 25% individually if I look at all those radio channels. So it's a huge advantage for someone to use it, even if not Spotify as alone or a standalone channel, but use it as the part of the ecosystem when they are buying audio for their marketing campaigns. Not only that, just to add, Spotify is reaching out to Gen Z more than radio, where we see radio users, I mean, Gen Z on radio is the first one to going lapse on radio and going to have more control, like I said in the start. So they are the one who's going to go and want to have more control.
Yeah. So I suppose I mean, this would not be the first time that the Gen Zs are being called out as being more digital savvy, more receptive in terms of any form of streaming and taking control, right? So if you look into, if we dive deeper into the listener's profile and the screenless moments. Of course, we talk a lot about screenless moments because, 75%, what we see is that 75% of our audience actually consume a lot of audio during times when they are not actually visualizing or seeing something, right? And we know that because Gen Z are most likely to be engaged on digital platforms, especially on music streaming platforms. What else can you tell us about maybe the other different generations of users?
Yeah, so when we look at these things, we look at, so I've done many studies where I've looked at how people are using their mobile phone or the media ecosystem, right? We generally look at the screen time. And that's where the one interesting thing for me in this study was to look at screenless times. And that was really interesting because people do use their phone and devices for those screenless times. And the few big things that emerged in the study that, the users in Singapore, or the listeners in Singapore, if I may call it, uses mostly while relaxing, traveling, commuting, exercising. And these are the behaviors they do over half of the population does this kind of thing. But even interestingly, over 1/3 of the population or the listeners also uses Spotify or music streaming apps while studying, working, and partying. I mean, that's really interesting because studying, working, and partying are different genres that people won't think of, and that's where this the importance of Spotify that comes in the media ecosystem, right? Not only that, but just to add, they also listen to on desktop. So about 36% users listens to Spotify on their desktop or laptops. Now, probably that's because when they are studying or working, So yeah, that's interesting to know as well. That's the kind of behavior that Singaporeans do on Spotify. Yeah.
Well, I guess, given the fact that we've been at home mostly in the last 12 months, we need some form of partying, right? Even when you're working or studying. Okay, well, that's really good. I mean, a lot of the details can be found in the report, obviously. But let's move our attention to how this can work from an audio advertising perspective, right? Given what we have learned so far from the insights, and it's quite thorough, right? How do you feel that Singaporean brands, especially our FMCG folks, can best leverage those audience insights from the Spotify platform, even if there is no music strategy? Because the most common myth, right, is that I will work with Spotify only if I work with an artist, or if there's some form of music element.
I mean, so okay, the base thing is that when we ask consumers or listeners, what do they think of advertisements on Spotify? About 33% of them say they find it more relevant than compared to radio. The ads are more relevant. And the base thing for that is obviously that the users have more control. They know what they're listening to. But at the same time, that digital ecosystem on Spotify allows marketers to serve relevant ads. And serve those ads only to those consumers they want to reach out to. So I am not going to listen to, if I am on Spotify, to any female advertisements which are targeted to females, or vice versa. Females are not going to listen to anything about razors or save, you know. So that makes it more relevant and makes it more engaging for them, right? And that ecosystem is slightly different to that traditional broadcast media where one people or one person is listening to all the ads that are being served to the entire population. That comes with a huge advantage, and I think marketers should leverage that whenever they are going for the media buys. But obviously not just for audio ads, right? Spotify can be used for display and video ads as well. I think maybe that should be a question for you. You would be the best person to answer. What do you think, like looking at the past campaigns on Spotify, how different FMCG brands have been doing and using, do you want to call out any specific ways of advertising on Spotify?
Well, thank you for the throwback of question over to me. Not to do a self-plug of sorts, right? But I think it's also equally important to also mention, we actually did an annual analysis of all the CPG campaigns that we've run in 2020. And what we have observed is that, you know, while we ran campaigns that is multi-format and some are just on audio, we did find that the campaigns with the strongest brand lifts are actually using a medium mix of about 65% audio, no more than 30% on display, and up to about 15% in terms of video. So, you know, while doing audio is great, and that's what we are strong at, right? It's what we see is that the strongest connection actually happens when a brand takes multi-format approach. And of course, you know, and not just our research, right? That every other research does state that when you target the right audience at the right time with the right message, right, you do tend to get better results, and you know it resonates better. We also ran a campaign with Axe. The campaign was called Axe Mood Buster. Makes you feel just as good as you smell, and you know all about the Axe proposition, right? Interesting though.
Yes.
This campaign was actually targeting men, obviously, aged between 18 to 40. So, and we were looking at users during the key playlist moments, like gaming, getting ready, party, workout, and romance.
Wow.
You know, and of course, we wanted to announce how their body is actually, you know, can actually cheer them up, right? And we obviously laid the brand lift study on this campaign. And what we saw is that ad recall were up by 17 points, brand awareness was up by about 7 points, and top of mind awareness was up to about 4 points.
Wow.
Right? So, you know, we don't just run a campaign, we also want to understand how effective it was. Yeah, but thank you very much for the throwback of question.
That's really interesting campaign and really good results there.
Yeah. Well, when we do it right, of course, we hope that the campaign will turn out to be amazing, right?
Yes.
Well, looks like that's all the time that we have on this topic. Thank you, Warish, for your time again today. And most of all, thank you to all of you for your continuous attention in listening to us so far. If you'd like a copy of the Kanta incremental study, The Golden Age of Audio is Now, please reach out to your local Spotify sales rep today. Next up, we have Vanessa and Philippa, who will take you through how FMCG brands can optimize their audio strategies. Over to you, ladies.
Hi, my name is Vanessa.
And I'm Pippa, and we're creative strategists at Spotify Advertising.
So this session is all about how brands can tell better audio stories and make better ads. It'll be sound immersive, so we recommend plugging in your headphones now if you've not already done so. So today, we will enter the exciting world of consumer goods using the power of audio.
Welcome to the world of consumer goods, of snacks and toiletries, condiments and cleaning products, frozen food and fizzy drinks. It's a world of our lives. moods and mindsets? Our ups. And downs. Even our most precious moments. It's the story of our everyday, and it can be told in sound. This is the power of audio.
So you've heard all about how you can use audio to drive greater impact with customers. Now, we're going to dive into the storytelling part of it and go through some creative principles that will help you build your brand story in sound. As you've just experienced, FMCG isn't just rich with product sounds. Sound design can also depict the micro moments in your customers' days. Do you know that these soundscapes can fire up your customers' imaginations? At the same time, they can make your brand story personal to your customers. That's because of the science of sound. When we use sound to paint a scene, the listener's imagination kicks in to complete the rest of the picture in his or her mind.
So, if listeners heard this, then they would complete what's going on with their own imaginations and, most likely picture their own families. These dinner sounds might make one person think of a meal with their favorite chicken curry dish. Another person might picture a family dinner with his mom's sambal fish or grandma's secret beef rendang recipe.
And that's the other thing about audio. It pulls up our memories. Audio is closely tied to memories and emotions because the part of the brain that processes memories is near the part that's connected to processing sound. In fact, sound is second only to scent in its power to evoke memories. So, tell a story with sound, or as we call it, use theater of the mind. Now, brands have a powerful tool to draw consumers into the brand story, but at the same time, let them add their personal touches to it.
Using soundscapes also helps save on word count and precious time. Like this example here. Let's have a listen.
Whether you're into or you prefer, fuel your game with Brand X Coffee. Latte for creamy texture, mocha for a rich flavor, double shot for that extra edge. Brand X Coffee. Tap the banner to buy now.
And if you want to take it to the next level, amplify your story with 3D audio. Fun fact, over 80% of our listeners are on headphones. So 3D audio gives them a truly immersive experience, like they're being transported into your brand's world. Here's how Fuse Tea tapped 3D audio and also the latest ASMR trend for their spot.
Serve yourself a little me time with Fuse Tea. Listen to our ASMR Mind Tingles podcast. Click now to stream on Spotify.
Telling your story in sound also includes branding. So instead of using typefaces and colors, use sound instead. Time to roll out the audio mnemonics, brand theme songs and jingles, and of course, your sonic logo. Let's take a listen at a few. I'm sure you recognize lots of those, if not all of them. And now is the time for your brand to really start thinking about sonic branding as well.
Another tip for storytelling, when it comes to voiceovers, keep it conversational. These days, messages have a more casual vibe. Listeners should feel like they're hearing about a tip or recommendation from a friend.
And very important, have a call to action. Learn more, shop now, grab some at a store near you. These are just some examples, but give your customers a next step as well as a destination. and make it easy to remember.
And of the creative principles we're sharing today, this one's important. Context matters. Because this is digital audio, there are many ways to build out your campaign by location, age, or gender. But brands can also use our Spotify first-party data to target the customers they want in the right moment or mindset or mood. For example, X Ice Chill targeted Gen Z males in the Philippines with ads for the workout, party, dating, and jamming with friends moments. Here's the workout one. Have a listen.
Checking out those post-workout gains? Oh yes. But over-flexing and showing off? Whoa. Chill. Play it cool and spray the new Axe Ice Chill. Cool skin by up to 11 degrees. Cause you know, you're hotter when you chill.
So, context is important. 75% of listeners say they remember ads more when the ads recognize their moment or setting.
Other ways to get creative, especially if you're buying programmatically, is to try things like sequential ads or do A/B testing. Audio is a medium that can react fast, so you can tweak your strategy and your creative as you get new learnings. And while we've been talking about audio, don't forget that Spotify has video and display ad solutions too. Multi-format campaigns drive better results and give incremental reach.
So, does audio really work? Check out this experiment by Adrian North of Leicester University. It happens in a store where there's a shelf of French wine next to a shelf of German wine. So, for 1 week, French music played in the background, like this. And the following week, it was German music as the background soundtrack, like this. So, when French music was playing, French wine outsold German wine 5-1.
And I know what you're thinking. That's not that surprising. The French are very well known for their wines. But when German music was playing in the background, German wine outsold French wine 3-1. The most interesting part actually was that when people were asked if they bought the wine because of the music, less than 3% actually realized that there was any music playing in the background. The point is, sound isn't just powerful for storytelling, but it can also influence. So it can leave an impression with your customers, whether they actually realize it or not. So start thinking about the ways that audio stories can connect you to your customers.
To sum up, here are 3 takeaways for today. Tell a story with sound, cue your brand, and remember, context matters. And this is it for Creativity in Aisle 3. Don't forget to submit your questions for the live panel session later, where I'll be there with other audio experts. You can add your questions to the box on your right. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A section of this webinar. So I'm Joseph, and I'm the sales lead for Singapore at Spotify. And I'm joined here today by Kinyu, who's the APAC Social Media and Consumer Engagement Lead at the Coca-Cola Company, as well as Vijay, the Managing Partner at Vayner Media APAC. Well, congratulations on the recent promotion, Vijay.
Thank you.
And we're also joined by Vanessa, the Creative Strategist Lead at Spotify. Right,
Hi.
So okay, let's dive in. I think we have a first question from Sarah. The question states, what inspires great audio and how do you think it impacts the FMCG marketing space? I believe this might be a creative question that Vijay might take on.
Cool. Super
Vijay,
interesting
over
one.
to you.
Yeah, cool. Super interesting question. And I mean, audio and sounds and music has always been in brands and advertising. For early on, iconic. I think music makes advertising iconic as well. If you look at some of the commercial, like Cadbury with the gorilla without the Phil Collins track, it would never be memorable. Like I think just the visual and the music playing along to it is amazing as well. So I think music and songs alone can keep your audience, like intrigued, capture their attention. That's so big, right? And also, how audio can make your brand iconic. I think audio, sounds, music, that muscle memory that it triggers. Sometimes you don't remember visual, you remember the song. Hey, you remember the ad that had this song, and you remember it clearly because you remember the sound, the music or the sound to that, right? And that's iconic as well. And this question, there's so many ways we can look at it, making, how audio, songs, and sounds can make a brand iconic, how it can trigger muscle memory, how a brand can also be embedded in pop culture. That's a big one. So if you look at, how Gucci is in a lot of rap songs, if you look at Rolls Royce, a lot of different brands are always in famous songs. And that alone, getting your brand into pop culture, getting your brand to be famous, that's massive as well. It's a lot. Like we can go on about it, like how it can create muscle memory, how music and brands can put brands in pop culture, how audio, even sound and technology, examples of this amazing brands using sound in a smart way for their audience. I remember one diaper brand used static sound or white noise to help babies to go to sleep. And that's amazing. A brand can use technology, can use sound, not just music, and make it memorable, but also using the technology behind sounds as well. I remember one brand as well, I think an automotive brand, if I'm not mistaken, to use sound in certain 100 BPM or between 60 to 100 BPM that makes you drive slower and drive safer. That's a smart way to use sounds and songs, right?
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I think we have a second question from Abhishek, right? Sorry, from Sarah. What inspires great audio, and how do you think it impacts the FMCG marketing? Sorry, this question was repeated. It's more towards Kinyu. So, are there any successful Coke campaigns on Spotify, and is there any inspiration that you can share with us right now?
Yeah, thank you. At Coca-Cola, whenever we do partnerships, right, with strategic partners like Spotify, we want to make sure that it's a deep partnership. It's not just the transactional, we buy ad spots, because pretty much anybody can do that. And I think the key difference is to understand that when we get into these kind of partnerships, we want to bring value to the consumer experience. So we sell beverages, and obviously Spotify is in audio or in music, and we want to add to that consumer experience, not just to be an interference, right? An ad is just literally standing between you and your content. And to do this, we're very open to innovate together with our partners. So we know Spotify, for example, is good at affinity targeting. It understands its consumers, how they consume the audio mediums. So the example that I have is from Singapore. So this was a couple of years ago when we were working on Coca-Cola Afternoon Uplift Break. So the whole idea for the larger campaign is very simple. Coca-Cola gives our consumers, or our fans, that uplifting break in the afternoon with a can of Coke. Now, when we look at it from a audio or music standpoint, what would that translate to? So we worked with Spotify to actually uplift, what do you call it? Spotify playlists, right? So instead of listening to the same old thing, we heard earlier that most of the consumption happens when they are studying, when consumers are on the go. It's routines. So how do we change up that routine and actually uplift their music playlist? So that was what we did with Spotify. And again, that brings that additional value to the consumer experience and not just to be an interference, while still delivering, of course, the brand message.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing. I'd like to build more on that by banking on Vanessa's experience in this area. So, any successful inspirations that you have encountered on the Spotify platform so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, audio is such a big part of our lives, and FMCG pretty much touches every part of our lives. So, there are all these opportunities there to get, your FMCG product out there, whether it's through like product sounds or whether it's through like the experiences that people have. Like, can you mention, like, when you're drinking, is like that, just the sound of like Coke can opening and pouring and the ice and the tinkling is like, ooh, makes me thirsty already. So even that, like, what's the reward? Is like the quenching moment, all that. And then as VJ mentioned, is like, music and audio is also such a big part of culture. A big campaign that actually was created quite a big bang was the KFC bucket bangers, where KFC actually had this insight. They realized that a lot of songs mention their fried chicken or their bucket or their brand. So what they did was they created a playlist and compiled all these songs together. And now, of course, it was, multi-format, right? It wasn't just the playlist. They, promoted it on their social feed. They had an outdoor campaign. They even had a contest where they got consumers to, create their own rap lyrics that mentioned KFC. So that whole campaign was really, quite successful for KFC in France. They actually won a D&AD Wood pencil, which was, a really big deal in the creative circle. So yeah, it's such a big part of how brands can use audio in ads as well as beyond.
Awesome. Cool. So I think we have another question from Abhishek. It's pretty general. So how do you define a successful FMCG or CPG brand campaign? Yeah, I think I'd like to direct this question to both VJ and Vanessa. And
Vanessa,
perhaps
you wanna go?
also to elaborate, yeah, what role did audio play in some of these successful ones? So perhaps, yeah, Vanessa.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a recent campaign that was really successful. Again, audio is that's the trend today. It's not just about ads; it's about content. So, one example that actually had come from IKEA reaching out to the moments of parents trying to put their kids or their babies to sleep. They'll play like a sleep baby sleep playlist or a lullaby playlist. So IKEA kind of created ads for this moment where they had the IKEA ads. It's like, we know your baby is sleeping, so we're keeping this ad really soft, and that's why we're whispering. So using audio as its own canvas, you think creatively in this space, and then you build your campaign for that moment. So in this case, IKEA was building ads for babies during the sleep moment. Other examples is how, like, audio can be used, like maybe it's the absence of sound. So Marie Claire a few years ago did a campaign where the ad was actually quiet. It was like 30 seconds of quiet. So when people are listening to music and then that ad comes on and it goes quiet, they're like, what's going on? They take out their phone and they look at the banner and they realize that it's actually a message from Marie Claire talking about, don't stay quiet on when it comes to domestic abuse. It's like, do something, join this movement and all that. So again, using audio as its own canvas and being creative within that campus, and then you kind of like working, like, turning your campaign into like what works best for that moment. When it comes to FMCG brands, a great example was, I think, Nestle Lactogro used not just ads but annotations. So they had mommy influencers share the tips in their playlist. So it's like music, and then the mom will come in with some tips, and then they had different playlists for like playtime, eating time, or sleep time. So then the again, it's about content. So all these like mom brand ambassadors were like sharing spoken word messages to listeners in those moments.
So I'm going to jump right in, since Vanessa gave in a couple of smart and interesting examples as well. Some that I can think of is, how Colgate, and, the brand itself, Colgate, it's about, oral hygiene and basically keeping your mouth clean, right? They had this really smart idea of, scrubbing all the foul words and dirty words from rap music. and owning those songs, like make it friendly because it's, after you brush your teeth, you keep your mouth clean, so no foul languages. I thought that was super smart when it came out. And a client of ours, they're very smart with using songs and audio as well. So SK2 from PNG, how they used John Legend and created a track for Pitera with James Corden and stuff like that, and John Legend singing that song and just getting the word Pitera and their essence, the facial essence in the minds of the consumers of today. I think that's a smart way to use songs as well. Just like I said earlier, it's all muscle memory, getting into audiences that really enjoy music and embedding your product and your brand in songs, in music, in smart ways. I think that's so amazing, right?
Very nice, very nice. Thanks for that. So we have a question from Samuel Villaroman. So any tips for brands that don't have dedicated production allocated for audio creatives yet, and would repurposed video creatives, the audio side of the video creative, would that be a good starting point to create an audio creative? So perhaps I'd like to bank on Vijay's expertise in that area.
Yeah, I think, because video was made for visual, and then if you don't plan audio and video together, and if you're just using audio by the way, or I'm just going to strip the audio from this video and put it in, I don't think it's the best way to do it. Sometimes you got to plan and think like, okay, I know I'm going to use this asset as video, but I'm also going to use a visual or an audio cue to it. So I'm going to create a special track. An example we did for Prudential, one of our clients. Like we know insurance can be quite. Nobody wants to listen to an insurance ad, right? How to make it cool? So create a track. We will create a music video. That's the visual part of it. But the song itself can have cues of the message that you want to say in the lyrics, in the sounds, and being smart with it. So then when you create it, you create both ways, audio and visual. I think that's a smart way to kind of do it. There's no way of kind of stripping it down. The other way is also when you think of brands, like sometimes it's not the song, it's not the music alone. Sometimes it's just sounds. And a lot of brands are getting into sonic branding. I know MasterCard was doing that. A project that I worked on prior to this was in Gojek and trying to get the sound of the app and the sound of the ads together. So we created a trigger sound that is used in the app whenever you order a car, but it's the same sound that's used in every audio ad or every audio sound or commercial that you go. At the end, you'll have the same sound from your app and the same sound. So creating sonic branding is also something that I would advise a lot of brands to kind of try to think about, because like we say, audio triggers it. You remember it a lot more than visual triggers.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I'd like to direct the conversation towards Kian Yu, right? So we have a question from Lee Xiao on how Coke has been engaging consumers in different ways, and can you share some examples of that? So we know that Coke is trying to engage consumers through music, through causes, through culture, and even more. So perhaps can you share more on this journey, can you?
No, thank you for the question. So Coca-Cola is 135 years old, right, this year. And it's been successful for such a long period of time, primarily because the brand has been relevant to the youth of whatever generation it was back then, right? So at any point in time, the brand is always relevant to the youth of that generation. So to be able to be relevant, I think we have to understand what is meaningful to the youth then. And this is important because this represents the point of market entry for Coke, right? And from there, you then build a lifelong consumer as you go along with their life cycle and their life journey. Now, as mentioned in the question, we obviously use different techniques, different mediums. And as marketers, quite frankly, the landscape is becoming more and more complex, right? So it wasn't so long ago. In fact, when I started as a marketer, TV was the main platform. And you know that to get mass awareness, you needed to have a strong TVC or TV campaign. And the rest were kind of peripherals that added to that message or that experience. But you knew that with a large or wide base like TV, you would have gotten your base awareness solved. In today's world, it's no longer that easy, right? So there's no one real big medium. And if you think of all of the touch points, it's almost like a net or a web where the consumers can come in and out of pretty much any point. So because there's no main medium, I think it's really important for brands to understand what each of these mediums and each of these touch points mean to the consumer. What role does it play in the consumer's lives? What are they getting from this, right? And from there, we have to understand the strengths of each of the mediums. So Vijay talked a lot about audio. Vanessa also saying that you can actually get creative with audio, and it sticks to the memory, right? It sticks to the mind. Now, the reason for this is because audio and music especially evokes emotional resonance, right? So whether you relate to it, whether it brings out a feeling, a memory, or even evokes the other senses. So I love Vanessa's example that she had earlier of the opening of a can of Coke and just hearing the fizz, the pop, the gulp. Suddenly, you start to salivate, right? So audio evokes a lot of emotions. And what brand can do is actually to look at what they're doing outside of this and link that, knowing that there are certain touch points where audio is key, link that and make it to be meaningful for that touch point. So the example that I have is Share a Coke. So I'm sure most people have heard of Share a Coke in some shape or form, right? And the original starting point was to change the primary packaging to say Share a Coke with a person's name. And with that, you have the direct relevance that's pretty much most intimate, a person's name. That's the most relevant you can get, right? But our team in China actually took this a step further and launched this campaign called Share a Coke and a Song. And rather than having the name on the pack, it had certain lines of lyrics from key songs that we understood that people had a lot of resonance to, right? That people can relate to. And this campaign took it to a different direction. So it wasn't just about sharing with the intimate relationship of a person's name, but a fond memory, right? Or a shared memory, or a shared feeling, or shared experience. And through, obviously the lines on the pack, the person can actually share the song itself on various platforms with their friends. So, and this attracted people because the lyrics, even though it's just one line from a song, meant a lot to a lot of people, right? So I think that's how we make sure that we look at the mediums that are available to us. We look at obviously what the brand messages are, and we want to make the most out of those mediums without just being an interference, as I said earlier. So think about how do we add value to the consumer experience in whichever touch point, whichever medium we choose to get into. I hope that answers.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I
More
want to
than
jump
answers
in
the
there as
question.
well.
Sorry, Vijay.
Yeah, I want to jump in there. I so agree with what Kenyu is saying. Like the value that a brand can give in whatever form that is, it's so important, right? And the last thing the consumers of today or the fans or the followers of today want to see is advertising. They're skipping advertising and they're not watching a lot of TV. So how do you capture as a brand and as an agency, how do you work together to capture the attention of the consumers and the followers of today in spaces that they are not filtering? So not ads, they're listening to music on Spotify because it makes them feel something. It's during working, during studying, the audience are doing that. So how do you embed? And because if it's going to be an ad, they will be automatically just skipping it or they'll turn it off, right? How do you embed your message and your brand and give them bring that value to them in a platform or in a space where you can capture their attention or where they are? I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, to
Perfect.
add to
Thanks
that,
for.
it's like So I just want to jump in and also add that, like, it's all about the resonance and finding how, you can take the audio campaign and then make it bigger by, bringing it to where the consumers are. Is like one example that came to mind was actually the Walls jingle, where the ice cream guy, he would cycle and he would play the jingle, and you immediately know it's not just ice cream, it's Walls ice cream. So again, it's like all these
Pedal
parts of
Pop,
like
I think it
audio
was.
branding. Yes, exactly. Pedal pop. That was the one. The. I was like, yes, I know what that is. I grew up with that. So exactly what Ken you
I
mentioned is
remember
like
that
it
as
brings
well.
up memory. See, it brings up memories. It brings up experiences, and then people are reacting to audio. So yeah, just wanted to add that part in. And ice cream. So yeah.
Nice. Thanks for jumping in. We have time for a couple more questions. So there is a question from Judy Au. Besides audio ads, are there other digital activations possible on the Spotify platform? Yeah, so I think I'll just quickly answer that. Yeah, we have three broad ad formats: audio, video, and display. It'd be best if we can get in touch with you after the event to, perhaps take you through the offerings on Spotify. All right, moving on to the next question. It's a question from Jubilee Tai. How do you begin broaching the conversation about using audio as a medium with stakeholders who aren't familiar with the field? So I think it's probably a space that Kinyu and perhaps VJ will be very familiar with. Kinyu, do you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think this is an internal stakeholder management issue that's not just related to audio, if I'm being honest, right? Most of the time, any new medium, any new formats that people may not be as familiar with, you will always get that sort of hesitance, let's put it that way. Now, I think what works as a normal base is that if there is something that is comparable to what they already know. Now, this is not the best way, okay? So I'm using this as a starting point, but it's not the only way that you can do it. So compare this with the value that you can get, whether it meets your awareness objectives, whether it meets your conversion or engagement objectives, whatever it may be. Use as close a proxy in terms of a like for like to something that we are already doing and show that there's incremental value there, right? And usually this is in the form of return on investments. Now, that's not always doable because it's not always apples to apples comparison. I think the best way is to marry that with what we understand about the consumer. So going back to the point earlier, I think Vanessa brought it up. Brands really need to understand where the consumers are spending their time and their interest in, right? So usually when consumers are spending the time in a particular medium, it's because they're interested in something that that medium is giving them, whether it's entertainment, infotainment, education, whatever it may be, right? So understanding that, what's the size of price in terms of what you can capture, that captive audience, what you can capture, and marrying that with the value that you can get out of it towards your objectives, your company objectives or your brand objectives. I think that's the best way to make the case. Now, all that being said, the actual operationalization can be difficult. So I would recommend starting with a pilot or a test, right? And leverage partners like Spotify, who obviously understand the consumers within that space a lot better than the brands do. And run tests that is more controlled, so the risk is not as high. So that will be my suggestion.
Yeah, just adding to that, I think Kenyu, that was a great, from a brand perspective, from an agency perspective, it's always tough to go in and kind of sell the new to a lot of brands, especially in an agency like where I come from, VaynerMedia, we're like into the new, like the NFTs, the memes, whatever that's trending and huge in culture now. And most brands, and especially the higher that we present to, very rare, a lot of them would want to experiment or take a gamble. A lot of the clients and feedback sometimes will come like, oh, do you have data to prove this, that it works? There is data to prove that, like Kenny was saying, that the audience are seeing this. But in terms of the idea, sometimes when you present something new, it's not done before, there's no data. So sometimes I think just experimenting and winning the trust of a lot of the clients and the stakeholders, and just telling them that, we will do all the stuff that is, that's going to get your data, or that's based on data that's already trending, that's going to be that's proven that it works. But also you need to put aside 10 to 20% sometimes of experimentation that nobody's done before, because a lot of brands, like we were talking about this, there's a lot of sea of sameness. If you end up following the data all the time, you'll end up doing the same thing. But if you take 10% or 20% and do something new that people have not done before, you might be the pioneers of it, So just winning the trust and winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great advice. Thanks for that, Ken Yu and Vijay. So that gives me a good segue into the last question we have from Fikins. I hope I didn't butcher that name. So how would you convince a business in one sentence that audio can boost their brand awareness? So I think I'd like to direct this to all three of our panelists to end off this segment. So who'd like to go first?
I can go first. Yeah, how the boost brand awareness. I think audio is really, it breaks through. Don't forget that our hearing is always on. So remember, audio is why we have things like earworms. So, these are things that can stick with consumers, whether they realize it or not. So yeah, use audio because it's actually a very powerful medium.
I'll
Who's
go
next?
in next, right? I can go
Just
next.
one sentence.
Yeah. So for me, I wouldn't say it in a sentence, but more of like, audio. You remember when you first fell in love? There is a song to that, right? Like your first time you met someone that you really love, or the first time you had your first dance, or your wedding song, or your song, right? And so audio has the power to make you fall in love. So why not use it for a brand? Like I think that's just my take to audio.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
agree with both Vijay and Vanessa. And I'll just add that we have to remember audio is one of the most fundamental communication tools amongst human beings, right? So literally, this is a very fundamental way of communicating, and therefore it does reach the consumers in a very meaningful way. So I hope that people don't forget that when we think about all the other stuff that can be done, that this is still a fundamental communication tool.
Well, thanks. Thanks. That's a great way to wrap up this segment. So thank you, Ken Yu, Vijay, and Vanessa for being on the panel. And thank you to all of you for tuning in and attending the event. Hope you enjoyed and had as much fun as we did. So don't forget to submit the NPS survey and stand a chance to win an exclusive gift from Spotify. And next up, we have Remy Wolf's performance. So stay tuned.